Hey everybody, it is Sarah, and I am super excited that you are joining me today to hopefully be empowered to better yourself in some way. There is no greater joy for me personally than seeing other people sort of wake up to their own power and start to realize that in fact they are in control of their feelings, their thoughts, their actions, and their life. There's something so empowering about realizing that truth. And so whatever you're going through today, I hope to encourage you. I hope to empower you so that you can not only think differently, but then that can lead to feeling differently. And when you feel differently, you will automatically act differently. And that's right where change begins to happen. It happens first in our mind. And so today I have a question for you. And that question is, what is the story that you have been telling yourself about you? I started thinking back to the story that I've told myself since I was a little girl. And it's kind of funny to realize that the story that I have told myself has actually been more positive than negative. The story I told myself when I was a little girl was that I was stronger than all my boy cousins, and that they, even though they were boys and I was a scrawny little girl, that I could still beat them in different things. And that's the story that I told myself. I started realizing that I would tell myself things like that I was very pretty, that I thought I was really pretty and I liked the way that I looked. And that was another story that I told myself over and over, to the point where I might not have been pretty at all, but that was a subconscious story that I was telling myself. Another one was just a story that I was worthy of whatever I could dream and worthy of accomplishing anything that my heart desired. I remember telling myself a story that I was a good friend and that I wasn't perfect. That was another story that I still tell myself today, that I am not perfect. I will never be perfect. But that I am a good friend, that there are no limits. These are all subconscious stories that I told myself from the time that I was a little girl. And when I realize where do those stories come from, I am very grateful. Because I had parents that gave me those stories, that said those things over me, that I could do anything, that it didn't matter if I was a girl, I could still be president of the United States. It didn't matter, whatever it was, I could do it. I remember coming home from middle school one day, and my maiden name is Liljestrand, and some kids were teasing me because I'm a very hairy girl. As you can see, I've got a lot of hair here. Well, not just on my head. I had started to grow a mustache through puberty, which was really fun, and they were calling me Sarah Liljastache. And I went home and told my mom. I was a little upset about it, of course, and she said, well, you can't be perfect. Everyone has to have something wrong with them, right? We all have to have one thing that maybe isn't completely perfect, and maybe that's your one thing. And I remember I went back to school the next day, and to the boy who was making fun of me, I just very much looked at him in the eye and said, well, I can't be perfect. I mean, you're not perfect. There's not anyone who's totally perfect. So yeah, that's my thing. And so I was taught even to own the parts of myself and to be proud of the parts of myself that maybe I didn't like, and to have a shift in perspective around them. And thank God I got to an age where I could wax and do different things to take care of it. But those stories that I told myself, they came from parents speaking those stories into me, and then I believed them about myself, and I carried them with me throughout my life, and I carry them still today. I don't believe they come from a place of arrogance or a place of better than. They come from a genuine, deep knowing that I am completely whole, completely worthy, and completely loved in myself. So having, been able to coach a lot of people in my life, having relationships, I have learned that although the story I was telling myself wasn't true, right? All the time, it was more on the line of probably exaggerated on a positive side. It was helpful for me in attaining the goals and the dreams that I had. So I've learned that most of the stories that people tell themselves are opposite of that. They are not great stories about themselves. They are stories along the lines of, I moved right out of my parents' house into my husband's house, and so I never got to find myself or know who I was. Stories of my brother got all the attention and my parents didn't love me and never gave me the attention I deserved, and therefore I am not lovable. Most of these stories that we carry with us as adults are stories that we've created or have been put on us since we were young. Maybe when we were just being a kid and we were scared, and an aunt told us that we are just a scaredy cat. And somehow now you find yourself as a 50-year-old and you tell other people you're a scaredy cat. It's wild how these stories, these made up stories, when we take them on as our own, become true. And so I guess my question for you today is, what is the story you've been telling yourself about you? And where did that story come from? When did that story begin? Because if it's negative, then that story that you keep replaying, that you believe to be true, everything in your life, every relationship, every encounter is going to mirror that part back to you that needs to be loved, that little kid inside of you that needs to be validated and healed and told that it's okay and that you're not a scaredy cat, that you're brave and it's okay if you don't want to do that right now or ride the ride right now or whatever it might have been when you were a kid. That's okay, because there will come a time when you feel brave enough, if you want to do that, to do that. We have to understand, first become aware of what the story is, and then really get curious around where it came from. Because the chances are it was a story that was created when you were young, and it probably shows up in every part of your life. And if we think about stories that, come when we're later in life, maybe you get angry when you drive a lot. And so that's the story you've told yourself. You've told yourself that you're somebody who's working on that and trying to break that. But you're the kind of guy that gets, or girl that gets, really angry when people don't drive correctly or the way that you expect them to drive. And that pisses you off. As long as you are taking that story as part of who you are, then that is who you will be. If you start to recognize the story you're telling yourself and you start to say, I am somebody who has patience when I drive. I am somebody who has a great heart and is kind and gives people the benefit of the doubt. And I am somebody who genuinely would help anybody in need. I am that person when I drive. Then as you start to rewrite that story, your subconscious mind will look for that to be true. That's why I'm so passionate about mindset, because people want to change their lives, and sometimes they want to just willpower through it, right? They just want to I'm just going to do the actions. I'm just going to go to the gym every day and work out every day. But if you don't believe that you're worthy of that body you desire, if you don't believe you're the kind of person who can stay consistent, and if you're telling yourself that you're a person who constantly quits, well, you can attempt to try to go to the gym all day long, but you will never get there consistently, because there's a subconscious narrative, a subconscious story you're telling yourself that needs to be addressed. And so if we want to change our actions, if we want to change how we show up, we first have to talk about what's between our ears. And when we change the way that we think, when we start to rewire our brains and we start to change the way that we think, then we begin to change the way that we feel. Our feelings, our heart center, our emotions, those start to change. And once those start to change, we then choose different paths. We choose different actions that are in alignment with how we're feeling, which goes back to what we're thinking. So I guess take some time today, and if there's one part in your life that you would like to change, ask yourself the question of what story are you telling yourself? What's the story? And then get curious around what that story might be, where that story might have come from, and is it helping you or is it hurting you? Again, the stories I was telling myself when I was young weren't true. Just like negative stories we tell ourselves, they're not true. But I do realize that when I was telling myself these positive stories, they were helpful for me. Even though they weren't true, my subconscious mind was looking to make them true in every situation. And whether that is a positive belief or a negative belief about yourself, your subconscious mind has a thing called confirmation bias, and it's going to look for those things to be true at a subconscious level all the time. Which means if you believe that you are annoying, you just hold that belief about yourself because when you were in middle school, people told you you were annoying and that you talked all the time and you're just really irritated and annoying. And then you become an adult and some other people say, you hear through the grapevine that they're annoying, you're annoying, you're annoying, you're annoying. You are constantly going to be looking for that to be true because you've taken it on as a belief about yourself. So what's the story you're telling yourself, and how can you shift that story? How can you call it what it is, nothing but a lie, and shift it into a positive belief about yourself? If you found this helpful for you today in any way, I do ask that you would subscribe because my heart is to help as many people as possible wake up to their own power, feel empowered to be able to make changes in their lives for the better, if it's in their relationships, if it's at their work, if it's just physically. If you are desiring to show up better in any area of your life, you're in the right spot right here. And if you enjoyed this video, go back and watch my very first video. I believe it's called If You Feel Stuck in Life. So that's the very first video I ever posted. And thank you for joining me today. Know that you are strong, you are capable, you are worthy, and you can do this. Love you very much. Have a great day.